Hello there, my name is Sixo, but more on that later, as now it's time for a brand new unboxing video. Now before we get cracking, you'll find a link to TF Source's listing for today's toy in the video description. So if you like what you see, then why not treat yourself? Anyway, today we're casting our minds back to 2015 and remembering when this happened. Yes, in case you've forgotten, this was that weird viral picture of a dress where nobody on the internet could agree what colour it was, even though it was clearly blue. Well, we've got a similar phenomenon with today's subject, which apparently photographs very differently to how it looks in hand. Whereas this is the actual toy, this is how it's turning out to look in a lot of photos. I mean, he kind of looks a bit naked, no? So anyway, this is Earthrise Sunstreaker, and we're going to find out today if he really does live up to the second half of his name or not. Okay, and here is Sunstreaker in his box, and I really like the Earthrise packaging, it has to be said. You can see a clear view of the toy just there, some very nice artwork just on the side, just there, and just on the back you've got a couple of product shots as well. It's all rather good. And really, I'm just very excited to check this one out because, hey, when is Sunstreaker not exciting, right? I'm also really curious to see how this toy photographs as well, because so much has been made of this kind of, I don't know, weird effect that people are having on their phone cameras and things like that. Right, well, out the clamshell, and there's just a couple of bits of adjustment to be done, just with his feet like that, and then just fold his heels down at the back so he can stand. And there we go, we have a standing man. And yeah, he looks pretty good, actually, all things considered. Very nice, kind of clean design overall. Slightly long arms in terms of the proportions, but actually I don't mind that. I think that kind of works quite nicely for the character. Very, very yellow, as you would expect, and quite clean from all angles, so that's pretty good. You've got a weapon on the back just here, so that's why there's no actual accessories in the box. We'll get that off and take a look at that in just a minute. But overall, first impressions are he certainly looks very Sunstreaker-y. I feel like a big part of that is definitely this face sculpt, which on the whole, I think they've really, really nailed. It looks great, honestly, really nice design. Really love the shape of it with the dome. These ears are very much on point and look fantastic with the yellow paint inside. I mean, this thing is really tiny, so actually the paint applications look great in that regard on this head. Nice popping blue eyes as well, so that's really, really good. Kind of less convinced about this chin goatee just there, the old black chin that they've got. If anything, probably would have preferred it to just be, you know, straightforward silver. It doesn't look too bad. It just looks like a goatee, let's be honest. But overall, it's a really, really good head sculpt. And I do feel like Earthrise, actually, from what I've seen, and Siege have been crushing the head sculpts of late. So slightly less good is the paint on the chest, which, I mean, generally speaking, it's nicely applied and it's nice and thick, but you've got this little hairline sort of blemish just there, which is kind of annoying. Another little blemish just off to the right as well. So, you know, between the two of them, it's kind of not such a good showing, to be honest. I think that's, particularly for such a prominent area of the toy, it's a bit of a shame, it will be said. We'll talk a bit more detail in a minute about the painted versus non-painted sections on this toy, as that's the kind of obvious thing to kind of look at. I mean, even now I'm looking at it and it's definitely a thing, but yeah, we'll get into that in just a second. Very nice kind of blue translucent section on the chest just there for the windscreen, obviously, and that does look good, really nice. Liking the molded detail on the shins as well. I think that looks nice. Obviously got a little silver pin that's fairly obvious just there, but it doesn't detract too much, honestly. Some fairly obvious hollow legs, not going to lie. That's pretty prominent are those hollow legs just there, but hey ho. And then you've got more paint on the sides of the arms as well, which does clash a little bit with the hands, but still it's appreciated that at least some of this toy is painted. And of course you've got more paint on areas such as the wheels with that kind of silver trim, and that looks nice too. Okay, so let's talk about the paint on this guy, because of course there has been a lot of discourse online about the painted versus the non-painted parts, you know, how well it's come off, whatever else. You know, tons of people sharing pictures of the thing in hand where it does look rather bizarre, you know, that there's this sort of great disparity between the two bits, you know, where it's painted on the chest versus non-painted like on most of the body, and that it looks really, really odd. My first reaction is, in hand, is that it's not as bad as some of the photos I have seen. I have seen at least a couple of photos that make it look terrible, like really bad, to the point where I was like, oh man, wow, that is almost a bit of a write-off, you know? It's not that bad. That said, I have also seen people saying, oh, it's fine, it's really not a problem at all, and I disagree with that as well, to be completely honest, because it's sort of somewhere in between. It is noticeable, it's not terrible, it's not as good as it could be, do you know what I mean? And so I thought I'd do a little experiment anyway for today's video and just get out my my phone, because you can see on here, you know, that actually, if anything, that looks quite representative to me of the actual thing. I mean, I'm staring at it in hand right now, and I'm looking at the screen, you know, and I can take a couple of photos or whatever, and that's really not a million miles off, actually. Do you know what I mean? Does it accentuate it? Maybe a touch, maybe like a little bit, but actually not so much that I feel like it's some magical effect that is kind of skewing what you're seeing in reality. You know, like when you look at the toy, the actual thing, that is what you're seeing ultimately. I mean, you know, it does have very obviously a painted chest and painted sides, and then this whole bit down here is a much more kind of less vivid, slightly more washed out yellow. So even the colors themselves don't really match up from plastic to painted. You know, you will see a color difference in that regard. It's not just that one surface is painted and one is not. There is a bit of a color differential there. So yeah, my honest opinion is, yeah, not as bad as it maybe looks in some photos, but not perfect either. I actually do think it is a bit of a problem on this toy, to be honest. I was sort of waiting for that curious you know, moment where I whipped the cell phone out and I was like, oh my god, it looks so different to how it actually is to the naked eye. And a little bit, I guess, but still, you're gonna see it for sure. That's not to say he doesn't look nice, mind you, because overall, as I say, it's a very well presented figure. Proportions are a little bit not quite as sleek as I might associate with the character. Like, I do feel like he is slightly dumpy in terms of some of the proportions, but you know, I kind of associate Sunstreaker with being a bit more kind of lithe or whatever else, but overall, I do think it looks good. Now, in terms of articulation, you've got a fair bit going on. I mean, there's obviously, you know, movement at the head, side to side, and up and down, just a little bit as well, but you know, all you need really. And then you've got articulation at the shoulders, out to the side. That's pretty good. Then you've got the old bicep rotation just there, and of course the elbows do bend as well. You can get about 90 degrees just there, and wrist swivel. No articulation in the hands though. Then you've got waist swivel going on like that. That's very nice, and of course the hips. I've actually got quite a bit of range of motion on them. You know, you've got hollow sections there as well, but you can get quite a decent range of motion at the hips, and knees will go just a little bit beyond 90 degrees. That's not too bad. And then in the feet, you do have a bit of ankle tilt as well. So all good stuff. Okay, and then last thing in terms of posing is just to take that section off his back and then place it in his hand, or indeed any of the kind of weapons ports that you've got, like on the side of the arms just here. And then you can get him posed up like so. And yeah, he does pose pretty nicely actually. I mean, as you can see just here, you can get a very, very decent kneel out of him with a bit of thought. And overall there's enough, you know, articulation, whatever else going on to kind of give him, you know, a bit of play value, let's say that. Right, so let's go ahead and do a few comparisons. And firstly here you'll find him with Earthrise Alternate Universe Optimus Prime, aka Deathbed Prime. And I've just done a review of this guy as well, so check that out on the channel. And you know, he's there standing in lieu of the actual, you know, primary colors Optimus Prime, but you can see how the two molds look just there. I think they shape up pretty nicely. Okay, and let's do some comparisons with some other versions of the character. So here you have the Generation 1 toy, absolute classic that he is, and the Masterpiece. This is MP39 Sunstreaker. So there you go, all three versions, Masterpiece, Earthrise, Generation 1. And I absolutely love the Generation 1 toy. Of course, it's I mean, it's just an absolute classic that it is. It was the very first Diaclone mold, the very first of the car robots line that obviously a lot of them then became Transformers. So it is a real classic, this one, although that was in red, not yellow. But still, absolutely love it, even today. Very pleased with my Generation 1 copy too. And then Masterpiece MP39 is a real favourite of mine, it has to be said, because this guy is just superb design. It's one of those that I think is fully, you know, hard to appreciate unless you have it in hand, just because of the articulation is just off the chain. The engineering involved with the transformation is like nothing I've ever seen. It's an incredible figure all round. And I think it's really interesting because, you know, I do see a lot of comments from people saying, oh, well, with Earthrise doing these guys now, what's the point of Masterpiece? And I think actually having them both in hand just cements it for me how different they are, you know, in terms of parts count, complexity, engineering, paint, design, everything. But none of that takes away from what Earthrise achieves, which is I mean, it's much more simple, but actually it's got its own niche as well. Do you know what I mean? It's sometimes you don't necessarily want to pick up a figure that's as complex as something like MP39 or any of the kind of masterpieces, you know? And I think in that regard, for, you know, for collectors like me, it does kind of fill that void as well. So they all do very different things. I think they're all, you know, three very unique but interesting takes on the character. So there you go. Anyway, let's go ahead and get this guy transformed, shall we? and here's the car mode, and honestly I think it looks great. Really like it. Very compact, very kind of, I don't know, the weight tabs together is very clean overall, for the most part anyway, but we'll take a look at that in a minute. But yeah, you know what, I haven't got too many quibbles. I think it's a nice, fun little mold, and I think generally speaking the car mode looks really ace. Again, I definitely like the windshield section here. I mean, there is a kind of obvious visual break running along the middle of it and these seams from the legs, but you know, mostly speaking it works. I do wish that this canopy section kind of tabbed in a little bit better. It does feel like it doesn't sit 100% flush, and actually getting it in there to begin with was just a little bit of a fiddle, but not too bad. But I just feel like it could have, I don't know, just kind of lock into place a bit more satisfyingly maybe, but overall it's fine. Nice little bit of silver trim paint on the headlights just there, that looks pretty good. There's some nice molded detail on the side, such as these vents and the little kind of characteristic cutout bits from the doors on the Countach as well. That looks pretty good. Of course, on the rear section, you've got a lot of obvious paint, and it really does show, again, the difference between the two sections, as we'll take a look at. Yeah, that's something. It does look nice, actually, to be fair. The paint, where it is painted, it looks really good. And I do really love the detail on this intake section up top. I know it's his weapon just kind of plonked on top, but that is classic Sunstreaker, and it looks pretty good as well. I think they've done a really nice job with it to kind of make it look like a gun and like an intake for the top of a car like this as well. So pretty good. Of course, the elephant in the room is the paint versus the non-paint yet again, and you will see it. I'm not going to lie. I mean, here you can see all of this roof section down, just to the windows is painted, and then you've got bare plastic all along the sides, the bonnet, everywhere else. And then if we come around to the side, you can see that actually all of this is bare again, and then you've got the paint at the back. It does stick out. I'm not going to lie. It does stick out. And if people tell you it doesn't, I don't know, maybe it's a bit of wishful thinking, but certainly to my eye, it looks fairly obvious. I should stress it doesn't look bad though, and actually to my eye it's a very nice sleek mode overall. I do wish they'd nailed the paint a little bit better. I actually feel in some ways it would have been better just not painting the thing at all. Like, just choose a better colour for the base plastic, because it is a bit creamy. It's not a very vibrant yellow at all, so I feel like that colour could have been better, and then just not paint it, and that would have been a much better solution. If they'd have just found a yellow plastic that really popped nicely, just done that, leave it at that, it would have been fine. So I don't know, choices I guess, but still, as I say, it's a great looking car mode. It does look nice. Overall, I appreciate it. I guess what is slightly odd is when you line it up next to the G1 toy, is that actually, I don't know why it hadn't even occurred to me before, but of course the Generation 1 toy actually has some painted versus bare plastic sections as well. Like, none of this on the side is painted. These die-cast bits on front, and obviously the roof is all painted. So if anything, you've got 3 colour match sections, because the metal, the clear plastic that's painted there, and then the bare plastic on the side. But actually I feel like they always did an immaculate job at lining those up and making them look the same. I would never have even thought about the fact that they were different. Yet here on the modern toy, it's just all too obvious. So I don't know. I won't say any more on it, I guess. I've probably said enough, but it is a weird one. Let's just leave it at that. So anyway, final thoughts, because honestly that paint, it's really not that bad in hand, and I've talked about it enough anyway. And besides that, actually it is a really nice toy. I mean, I like the robot mode, the proportions and stuff aside, I think it does look really, really good. And the transformation is fun, and the car mode is really nice. So what else do you want at the end of the day? It's a simple little thing. It's great fun. Go get it. It's a toot. So that's Earthrise Sunstreaker. Now I'll put a link to TF Source's listing for this guy in the video description, and I'll be able to get the full review up on their blog soon. Otherwise, that's it from me, so don't forget to drop me a like if you enjoyed today's video, and have a great rest of your day. TTFN.